Hello everyone! Today, well, I would have liked to just feature a Nurnberg commentary because I've been grinding I grinded the German cruiser line a couple of months ago on the Russian server, and if you guys want, I can feature. I grinded through Nurnberg, York, Hipper, Rune, and so forth. If you want, I can feature some of those games, and today I would have liked to feature this, but Wargaming has once again baffled the world with their sheer incompetence. That's really the possibly the best way to explain it, and it's hard really to put into words how much of a screw up they have done. You remember when they tried to offer a scapegoat and they were shut down? It was like, we don't want this, this is a terrible idea, we don't want this scapegoat, go away with this. This is a problem that goes all the way up to the higher management at Wargaming. This is not something they can just blame on some poor dude, some poor guy who's been there for a couple of years. They can't pile this entire Yukon debacle on them. Well, they are trying, they did, well, they're not trying to, they did it. Gneisenau is actually been fired from Wargaming. You can see the tweet by Fem. I'm shocked. World of Warships managed to get Mchow fired over the Yukon situation, despite him no longer working for the product for months. Why she says this is because this guy, Gneisenau, he was moved over to World of Tanks in April. He was moved away months before this entire shit show went down, so Wargaming just randomly chose him as a name and kicked him. She goes on to say, Wargaming has a knack of losing and driving off talented staff under the premise of covering their backs. This is wrong, so wrong. And it really is. I mean, Little White Mouse, the one who was probably the most affected by this and who started this entire shit show, goes on to say, it wasn't even his fault. He was nothing but supportive of Jake Getty, that's Chobitsu, her Twitter, and I threw out the project up until he left the World of Warships team. He had nothing to do with the abuse we suffered. Nothing to do. And Chobitsu himself says, if there's one thing that war gambling could have done to make things irreparably worse, it was fucking this. I'm actually impressed. They're really going above and beyond to prove just how awful they are. Marvin, words can't express how sorry I am for you. Even previous Wargaming employees like Nico Power, that some of you may remember, who used to work for the NA branch of Wargaming, goes on to say, this is honestly shocking and not at the same time. This couldn't have happened to one of the nicest and most passionate guys on the planet. Saying it's wrong is an understatement. They picked a random name from a hat and kicked him to try to appease people over this shit show. Instead of actually doing anything concrete, instead of actually fixing some of the issues, listening to some of the feedback and trying to make amends, they literally just fired some random dude that they chose, and they managed to fire one of the people that the community actually likes and appreciates, and a guy who's really just, well, appreciate that. One of the few Wargaming employees that seems to be universally liked. Well, this just came out basically minutes ago. The guy, the senior manager, basically the boss of the guy who was fired over at World of Tanks Americas, he resigned. He just resigned. He stepped down. In fact, he posted on Twitter, "Hey tankers, I am sorry to announce that I am resigning of my position as Senior Manager of Community and Events on the World of Tanks Americas team. I will not be appearing on any more official streams, and sadly this means I will not be attending Aquino Tank Weekend at the Ontario Regiment Museum next week. But you should definitely still go, it's going to be awesome. I have been with Wargaming more than 5 years and I am proud of the work that we have done, especially in rebuilding up our operations after the move from Emeryville to Austin. I am fortunate to have been given the opportunities to advance my own career and interact with amazing and passionate people from around the world, yada 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 yada. I am making this painful decision because of the recent termination of an employee on my team that I believe to be a kind and competent individual for reasons that I personally perceive to be an illegitimate an incredibly persistent campaign to unfairly scapegoat him by the leadership of his former team that, in my opinion, is desperate to have anyone at all to blame for the most recent incident of what I perceive to be a toxic corporate culture perpetuating a cycle of serious errors that stretches back at least 4 years, well before his time on that team and with causes well above his pay grade. So this is the senior manager saying everything we as a community have been saying. It goes all the way high up. This is them just scapegoating him, and he's resigning in protest of this entire thing. He goes on to say, the team member in question did make mistakes, and when asked to apologize for them publicly, despite having left that team, he stepped up and did so like the honorable individual he is. In spite of this, senior members of that team, in my opinion, waged an unrelenting backdoor campaign to get him terminated from my team. I can only describe this behavior as cowardly, contemptible, and shitbird-like. This is more separation between our teams than is probably obvious to the public eye. There's more separation, and I sincerely hope that this incident represents a unique incursion of that culture into the Tanks team. I urge you not to judge the company as a whole by these actions, for there are thousands of dedicated employees at Wargaming that yada yada. So he's just going straight up and saying, World of Warships Russia is a fucking shit show. That's what he's saying. And he's trying to distance. They are so bad that even other members at Wargaming are trying to distance themselves from them. They have screwed up so badly, and even everyone else at Wargaming knows they've screwed up so badly, and now they're desperately trying to scapegoat this poor dude, and the senior manager is quitting in protest. They've really, really screwed this up. This is an incredible display of just poor public relations, just poor management, and complete inability to take any sort of personal responsibility for their mistakes, just trying to blame it on anyone else except, well, obviously at the culprit, which is themselves, the higher corporate culture, the guys that are actually in charge. They're the guys who are making these terrible decisions, which is what is causing all this uproar. I feel so bad for anyone who works with World of Warships, who has been in any type of contact with them, because what this shows is that if they do something stupid, not them, like the guys above, if they do something stupid, they might literally fire any random person to try to scapegoat them, to try to blame them for everything that has gone wrong. And I mean, this wouldn't, if they get sued for this, it wouldn't even be the first time Wargaming has been sued for illegal termination of an employee. They've really, really screwed the pooch this time. And I can't say anything else but huge props to Cabmech, Zachary Cabmech Doig, the guy who is the senior manager at the World of Tanks Americas team. Huge props to him for resigning instantly in protest. This just came out yesterday that they had fired this scapegoat that had fired this guy, and he didn't even hesitate. He instantly resigned and quit, and he was like, yeah, I want nothing to do with these guys. I've got nothing to do with this shit show. So I can only say huge props to this guy for having a real backbone and honestly standing up for what he clearly finds to be an injustice, and that is exactly what it is. And this alone is already a shit show and a half. The other story, of course, going on is that on the official Wargaming forums, the guy in charge, basically the boss, so to say, Mel H, he's like the general manager, the founder, whatever, of Leicester Studios. He's been going on there responding to people, and I'm not sure Wargaming ever even wants this guy to respond to anything, because he usually says the dumbest things. His latest thing is where he says that people, YouTubers and such, shouldn't be giving any feedback regarding the game, because instead they should be making their own game company and developing, and only then do they have the right to talk. He's making the argument that you're not allowed to criticize the game, and Wargaming are correct in ignoring any feedback from you if you're not a developer. It's the same kind of feedback, it's the same kind of argument that you can't criticize the food because you're not a chef. You can't criticize the movie because you're not a movie director. Obviously, it's hilariously stupid logic, and he's actually trying to peddle this on the official forums. And it's a complete shit show going down on the CIS forums as well, because they are heavily clashing with each other. And the moderators there are certainly not pulling any punches, and well, neither is the player base either. They basically got a full-on war going on those forums. In other news, well, there was a Q&A on the EU, was it the NA forum, EU forum? I think it was on the NA forum. They kind of moderated it and kind of shut it down because people were asking a lot of really uncomfortable questions. They did answer some of them, and I found this answer pretty depressing regarding the achievement rewards. Basically, why did they remove flags from achievements? And Wargaming, this is Evan's response. He goes on to say, "For us, this was not a significant change, since in our minds, we simply moved flags to a more broadly accessible medium, while achievements by their nature are already a reward in themselves, despite some comments to the contrary." So he's literally trying to go the EA route of pride and accomplishment of getting the achievement, and the flags shouldn't matter. We didn't anticipate that people would be upset about it that much. Since this is the case, we'll look into attaching some other rewards back to achievements. We didn't anticipate that people would be upset about it that much. There's so many nuances to this horrendous answer. First of all, this obviously invalidates that garbage argument that one dude at Wargaming made, where he claimed that people were trying to farm detonation flags. They straight up said that was not actually the case here. That was just a bullshit argument they tried to throw at us. This is not the first time Wargaming does this. But I don't know how to take this. I mean, if he's... the first thing that comes to mind is he's just lying. Of course they knew. Of course they knew that people were going to be pissed. Of course they knew how much people appreciated the flags, and they wanted people to pay for them. That's the obvious sign. I don't know if that's actually more comforting than the other option, which is that they are so horrendously out of touch with the player base, so horrendously out of touch with the game, that they literally didn't anticipate that people would be mad when they removed the flags. I don't know which one is worse. Both options are basically horrible. Note that even though people are obviously mad, and they're very well aware that they're mad, they're not going to reverse. They're not going to revert to the changes. They just said, we'll look into attaching some other rewards back to achievements. AKA, you're not going to get flags back. They're going to throw something else in there. Probably something useless. Probably something garbage. Because that's basically been their motto lately. Just honestly... a horrendous answer across the board. It verifies that what we heard earlier was a lie, and I can't tell if this is a lie or if this is just ignorance or lack of understanding with how really the game works and how the player base works. So I genuinely don't understand how they can be this inept. Like, do they not have a public relations department? At this point, I have to wonder, do they not even own one? If they don't, that should obviously be a priority for them. But at this point, I don't even know what that PR department could do, because they've made basically, not only are they at this point screwing with the players and the player base, but they've just annihilated any faith employees at Wargaming. Femininely says that they have a knack for driving away talent, and I mean, yeah, she would know. She used to work for them, and she left, and she did not have much good to say about that company once she left, and she started working at EA, where she has been progressing very well, and Nico Power hasn't had much good to say. Basically, anyone who's gotten out of that company has nothing but horrendous experiences to share. And now Wargaming literally fired a guy as a scapegoat, and his senior manager has resigned in protest? What the hell are they doing? Are their egos really so big? Is it so damn hard for them to admit that, hey, we fucked up, we are going to make amends, we're going to try to fix this, we're going to try our best to make this okay? This seems to be... I don't know if it's some ego thing, if it's some Russian culture macho thing, where it's just so hard for the upper echelons to admit that, hey, this is a disaster and we should fix it. Because they are actually managing to drive this even into a worse state than it was before. And I have never actually seen the player base be just this fundamentally fed up with Wargaming. Their bullshit doesn't fly anymore. Their bad excuses and lies are seen through. In the past, they kind of got away with throwing a couple of empty promises and some empty apologies that weren't even really apologies. They used to get away with it, but at this point, the people who are defending Wargaming are really only the biggest shills left on the forums. The guys who have like 100 battles and 15 premiums, and even them is like, you have to quit. They don't even seem to be aware what they're talking about. Those are really the only guys left. On any other medium, on any other Reddit, Discords, Twitters, all of these different platforms, it seems to be universal contempt. And I don't see how Wargaming plans to continue with their current philosophy, with their current business strategy of treating the players like shit, being in basically open war with the players. They've constantly, every time they do a stream or something, they have to blacklist 10, 15 different words because people keep bringing up, hey, what about LVM? What about Yukon? What about Chobits? What about the CC walkout? What about all these things? And they're getting so much shit on them that they're only left with the only classic Soviet answer, which is censorship. That's all they have left. How is that a working business strategy? How is that in any way going to work out for them? I genuinely don't understand, because I still feel like everything they're doing would be so easily fixable, but it would require them to swallow a big humble pill and admit to the mistakes and offer compensations and fixes and actually do something. Not just empty apologies, but actually do things. Their latest series of empty apologies where they promise to do a bunch of things in 2022 or promise to do a bunch of things in 2023 or explained how they actually can't show drop rates because, oh, they're so complex. We can't show them yet. We have to wait for 4 loot box cycles until we can even consider showing them. Like, we've seen through it. It doesn't fly anymore, Wargaming. You have to cut it out. How is it so difficult? It feels so bad because I still love the game. I still enjoy the game. But the developer is somehow actually getting worse in my eyes by the day at this point. I can't even imagine what it must be like to work for them and not take any part in this and still receive all the shit that comes with it, and now even have to be afraid of losing your job because Wargaming decides, hey, we're gonna pull your name out of a hat. It was actually your fault that this entire thing happened. Completely baffling. Meanwhile, my team has pushed in what seemed to be an easily winnable game in the Nurnberg. They have pushed in and basically suicided, and I'm stuck somehow, some way, trying to kill off an entire enemy team. Let me know, by the way, if you want me to feature some other German cruiser games. This game was a pretty good example of Nurnberg positioning and angling, ignoring just the entire shit show happening in the background. This was a pretty good example of just utilizing Nurnberg's pure gun power to my advantage, while at the same time trying to avoid and mitigate incoming fire and incoming damage in every possible way. At this point, obviously my team has all suicided. I'm forced to get a kill on this New York. My fire RNG has been terrible though. I'm not getting any good fires on a guy who isn't running fire prevention, which I've needed desperately to be able to pick up this kill and secure the cap. I'd really would have liked to focus honestly on the Nuremberg game, but it's at this point it's really depressing because I don't know what they can possibly do from this. Like, how do they really advance? How do they move on from firing a dude as a scapegoat and then having his manager call out everything us as a community have been saying, verify basically that this entire time us guys who were calling out Wargaming, we were more accurate than we even thought we were. Like, how do they come back and try to defend themselves from that? They have just dug themselves such a deep hole. It's absurd. It's so dumb as well. And all of this is because of pride. All of this is because of their one company's inability to admit to making mistakes. That's what it all comes down to. At this point, I'm trying to pick up this kill, but I think even killing the carrier is actually not going to be enough. This game is played before the rocket change, so I'm having to force to evade hard on these rockets and try to mitigate it as best as I can, because giving full broadside in a Nuremberg to rockets might get you absolutely devastated. He's still doing a lot of damage to me. I'm still scoring citadels on him with my HE because his armor is so thin and the HE pen is improved. At this point, with 17 seconds remaining, I'm trying so desperately to pick up this kill, being forced to dodge those rockets, once again being forced to turn in. to try to avoid these incoming rockets is really messing with me. I stay alive and the game seconds are ticking out, and just before the game ends I actually managed to kill him and get the Kraken, but sadly that is not enough to secure myself a win this game, and this game actually does end in a pretty depressing defeat. I mean, this is just, honestly, it's just baffling. 177,000 damage, Confederate Kraken high caliber. 10 citadels, was it 13 fires, 5 kills. For Nurnberg tier 6, I consider this to be an excellent score. Detailed report wise, well, sadly my team wasn't really present this game. They didn't have as much to do in this game as one might have hoped. 1.9k XP for me, about 800 for the second place is generally not an optimal situation. And finally, of course, detailed report, which does show that this was a good Nurnberg game in the sense that I literally fired over 1,000 shells. If you get to fire over 1,000 shells in a Nurnberg, then you have done a good job of positioning in a way that you can constantly utilize your guns. Your guns are blazing 24/7. Sadly, that was not enough to secure this into a win. And I would have liked to focus on this game, but holy shit. I can't believe that they actually managed to get a senior manager to resign and call them out. How is it how can you defend the company at this point? That's what I don't understand. Even their own senior managers are calling them out for their bullshit. Tell me, they have actually become indefensible, and I think it's really tragic, because in their pride they're really messing up my favorite video game. And I really wish they would stop messing up my favorite video game, because they're so goddamn prideful and so goddamn stubborn that they refuse to admit that, yeah, we really fucked up. Why is it so hard, Wargaming? Why is it so difficult? I don't understand. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I will talk to you guys next time.